Welcome, everyone, to this book discussion on Ambassador Chakravarti, Pinakaranjan Chakravarti's book, Transformation, Emergence of Bangladesh and Evolution of India-Bangladesh Ties. It's my honor to moderate this session where we have a cracking panel. We have three very distinguished diplomats, Ambassador Chakravarti himself. We have Ambassador Veena Sikri, who is the former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh. We have Ambassador Shahidul Haq, who is the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. And we have a very accomplished scholar, our very own ORF scholar, Anasuya, who's joining us from Kolkata. As somebody who looks at policy making from the outside, I always find it really good when former officials and diplomats write books, because in India, given the fact that official records are normally never made public unless somebody wants to leak them, it's always good to have former officials write about topics with which they have dealt. And I think Ambassador Chakravarti's book is one of those books. A spoiler out here that one always looks for some salacious stuff in books. Unfortunately, there isn't any. It's a kind of an academic book. It's a complete comprehensive roundup, a very slim comprehensive roundup of Bangladesh and how India-Bangladesh ties have evolved. But compliments to Ambassador Chakravarti because it's written in a very racy style. It's very easy read. It's a serious read, but a very easy read. And thankfully, it's not painful to read books. Very often, you come across books which are extremely painful to read. So congratulations for that, sir. But without much ado, I'll request Ambassador Chakravarti to talk about the book and whatever else he wants to talk about. And then we'll go on to Ambassador Shahidul Haq, Anasuya, and Ambassador Sikri. And finally, we will have a kind of a Q&A before we wind up. So, Ambassador Chakravarti, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shushan. Thank you, RF, for hosting this. I thank everyone, including my publisher, for bringing out this book, which has been a kind of exercise for about a couple of years almost. Off and on, I've been writing, and I never thought I could write a book, frankly. But why Bangladesh, you may ask? I grew up with lots of stories about our family's origins in that part of the world, which fascinated me. And I heard stories from my grandmother, uncles, others, in the large family we had. They came away from Bangladesh before the partition, I think, because my father was then studying in Kolkata, or had joined service already, probably studying and then joined service a little later. So those stories really, were embedded in my mind. And the name of our village, for example, I even have an email account using the name of my village, so which might be difficult to crack for many, cyber, attacks or something. So that was one interest that grew in me. And when I joined the Foreign Service, I thought, look, this is an opportunity that I can utilize. So I actually asked for a posting to Bangladesh after I had finished my stint in Delhi, after 3-4 postings abroad, which was mainly in the Middle East, and which is where I learned Arabic and specialized in that area. And then what happened was that my interest was in the neighborhood and Bangladesh, as I have mentioned. So that's how I went there for the first time in 1999. Was it 99? Yeah, I think so. And that's where my experience of Bangladesh began. as I got to know the country, the people, etc. So the book itself is a product of that. And my second term in Bangladesh, which was as High Commissioner from 2000 and 2009, 2007, 8, 9, 3 years. I'm almost 3 years. So this is a result of that and my experience there. It is obviously not an academic book, nor is it written in a style like a novel or anything. But it's a readable, as Sushant says. I made it, simple, so that it doesn't become dense and difficult to read. And I also chose topics which you find attractive to read, in the sense that my introduction, for example, is about a brief history, very brief history of Bengal, basically, where Bengal comes from, where the name comes from, what is the geography, etc., etc. Then, of course, partition, which is very important, because without that there would be no Bangladesh, as many Bangladeshis also believe that partition was a necessary historical event on the road to Bangladesh, finally. So those are the things that I have touched upon. Then the rise of Bengali nationalism, how it came about. Then, of course, other things like which people don't focus anymore is like the Chakma rebellion, and which simmers at a very low key nowadays, obviously, because the governments have tried to deal with that issue. But why it happened, how it happened, and what was the reason, etc. I've tried to do that. Then, of course, domestic politics, religion and politics, then the transformation in bilateral ties, and then, of course, a comparison at the economic story, which I have a chapter, which I believe is very important and needs to be told, because what was Bangladesh in 71 and what is it today? I mean, it's a vast, journey of success in many ways economically. And I have had a comparative chart in the book comparing Pakistan and Bangladesh. I think the figures are from 2021. And you'll be surprised to see those figures. On every count, Bangladesh beats Pakistan hollow. Although Pakistan is a much larger country, though in 71, Bangladesh had a larger population than Pakistan at that time. Anyway, those are some of the things that I've covered. Then, of course, the external factors, particularly the China factor, how it operates, how it influences not just Bangladesh, but our region as a whole, and what would happen if something happens with China, what are the possibilities, and what is the road ahead, basically. I conclude with some comments on that. So I don't want to tell you any more, because then you will stop reading the book. So I think I will stop here, and I'm open to questions later whenever you want.
Haq, would you like to go, sir?
Thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words on a very well-written book by Ambassador Pinakaranjan Chakraborty. I have gone through the book and I had the time, because most of the things that I knew, so it was just refreshing the memory, but also seeing in between issues which he has brought out. Possibly in Bangladesh, we give less kind of a focus on that. As I see in terms of Bangladesh-India ties, I'd be interested to know, instead of a relationship, why he has termed it as a ties. I'm sure that he has his own interpretation. But I think it's very appropriate to call the relationship as transformational. That, I think, conveys the nature of ups and downs that we had in terms of our relationship. I see Bangladesh-India relationship kind of subtly the partition and the post-partition. But I, being a relatively younger generation, we look at from 1971 and the memory of that. So that's where our common shedding of blood comes in. and the help that we get from Bangladesh. I was thinking that, what is the marker in terms of Bangladesh-India ties? One that I see, and I often mention that, in 1972, father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, came to Kolkata on his first visit abroad. And during that, he kind of asked by the press people, and that, how do you see Bangladesh-India? He said, many of the things are very special relationship. We have a bondage. They have helped us in our liberation. But in between, our relationship is eternal friendship. And I thought, that was one or two words, but that described and captured the relationship. It's eternal. Whatever you do, it remains eternal. So that's my starting point. And then the relationship went through ups and downs, which Ambassador Pinnock has captured. Very interesting kind of a story, what happened. But one thing is very clear. Whoever came in power in Bangladesh tried to have a good, excellent relationship with India. Whatever we hear outside the narratives and the rhetoric. So that's one. But I think in terms of transformation, as I see that after 1972 and, after all these things happened, in 2015, for the first time, we sort of ended up describing, the two prime ministers ended up describing our relationship, which is beyond strategic relations. So our relationship is not strategic, and it's in the communique of 2015, the visit of the prime minister to Bangladesh, that they agreed that it's beyond strategic relationship. So that also captures and builds on Bangabandhu's eternal friendship. Now, I'm sure that there will be others who will be speaking, but in terms of where the future ties, how the tie in future will evolve, I thought of reflecting on that, and I'll sort of point out Ambassador Pinnock's last sentence in the concluding chapter. I think it captures that sentiment. He said, quote, India and Bangladesh are destined to cooperate given their destinies will remain intertwined in future. I think, and that's also very intriguing and very interesting, and I want to build on that. The relationship is intertwined because we are located in a strategic place where it has to be intertwined, and despite some bit of a post-partition trauma that we went through. So it's in the Bay of Bengal, and in future this will shape the ties in a much larger and bigger way. The other one is that this area where people are very productive, very entrepreneurial, that will also shape the relationship. I'm talking about the demography and the growing economy and the market. So that's 3 pointers. I'm not bringing in the hurdles, the issues, which I'm sure that Ambassador Pinnock has dealt quite extensively, including the water issues. Now, I'll end with that. That what are the issues that will flourish, nourish, create a conducive environment for having the ties larger, bigger, and stronger? First is, I assume, and it has got reflected in Ambassador Pinnock's book, is that understand each other with due sensitivity and respect. That's very important, especially from Bangladesh side. Bengalis are very sentimental nation, so that has to be taken into account. So that's first. Second is, the system that's there has to be little more institutionalized to build the trust. That's the second one. Especially in dealing at the official level in particular. And the whole issue of, leadership is important, relationship between and among the leadership is important, but also the people-to-people contact where I think in future we'll see some of the potentials and some of the hurdles. Now, the last one is that there are new alliances allies emerging in the Indo-Pacific and in the Bay. In that context, also Bangladesh-India relationship would go through changes, as I assume. And there, I think we need to put special attention that certainly India, being one of the largest economy and power in this region, would have its own priorities. And Bangladesh, being a smaller nation, would have priorities. Not essentially all the priorities will converge, but they're each other's sort of exchange, understanding on this would really help. And that's area where I think today's diplomats should, and the political leaders should focus, that since the shape of relationship is evolving in the context of allies and alliances, how that could be more kind of more friendly in building the relationship. That not essentially that we'd have a similar kind of approach towards alliances and ally building, but we can always accommodate each other. So I will stop here. Thank you very much, and congratulations, sir, for reminding us some of the things that often we forget. It will be very good kind of a reference material for students. So in that way, you have helped, and it also gave me an idea. Possibly, in my humble way, I should also attempt some of the things which is not in the domain right now. For that matter, how do we reach to the terminology, beyond strategic relations? Nobody has ever defined that kind of it's a strategic, it's a comprehensive strategic, but beyond strategic relationship. One of the days, possibly, we'd also see how much convergence at the diplomatic level we had, that we can say that on a communique. Thank you very much, sir. Congratulations.
That book, you've been there long enough at the helm of affairs in Bangladesh, and we look forward to the book.
Thank you, Ambassador Haq. I second what Ambassador Chakravarti is saying. I look forward to your book, and I think if one of the ideas is to trigger this kind of activity, then perhaps your book is already becoming successful. So yeah, can I ask Anasuya to just give her observations on the book and whatever else she wants to, maybe as an academic, how do you see, because all of these guys, the other panelists, are all seasoned diplomats, and they have a certain way of looking at things. Perhaps you can bring something new to the table. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Sushant. Good afternoon, all of you. And at the very outset, let me congratulate Ambassador Chakraborty, to me, Pinagda, for the very interesting book. And, an important quality, apart from the content of the book, as I think Sushant has already mentioned, is Ambassador Chakraborty's way of writing. And it's so easygoing. And his professional experiences, along with personal attachments with the country like Bangladesh, get reflected in the book, which is full of insights and anecdotes. And really, I am very much attracted to these kind of way of writing with these anecdotes. And I think this has made the book an important addition to current literature on Bangladesh, not only to understand the country, but also to understand the transitions in Bangladeshi politics since its inception, cutting across Mujib era, military regimes, caretaker governments, democratic upheavals. But also, it is an important entrant to understand, the transformations in Bangladesh-India relations in the recent years. A person like me who is very much keen to work on contemporary India-Bangladesh or I was much more interested to start reading the book from the back. So whatever I want to share, I think after reading precisely and exclusively the last 4 chapters, that is transformation 1.0, transformation 2.0, and then vexed issues and also conclusion. And I think I have found very interesting couple of statements. Say, for example, Pinagda has talked about in specifically in chapter 8 on bilateral ties and a transformation 1.0. Focusing basically on the role of caretaker government between 2007 and 2008. And I found one interesting fact that he has talked about 2 formula, and also imposition of 2 formula, and where he influenced the government not to go for 2 formula, but to go for free and fair election. I found, as a student of political science, I found it very, very interesting, which I didn't know. And also he has talked about, India's apprehension at that time and desire to see the return of democracy. And also he has narrated the stories of this kind of apprehension among the Ministry of External Affairs, specifically from Foreign Minister Pranab Mukherjee's end. And one interesting statement that he has made in chapter 9, Transition 2.0, I think it is also very, very important to understand the current, bilateral relationship between India and Bangladesh, or Bangladesh and India, where Pinagda has specified strategic choice of taking steps to cooperate on India's security issues, strengthened bilateral ties. I think it is very, very important that at that particular point of time, Hasina government actually took this landmark decision to follow that zero tolerance in any kind of terrorist activities, and also helped India to crash down, more precisely, Alpha's dens. It is really, really a landmark and game-changing decision to gain confidence and trust in India's perception. And also another important statement that I think Pinagda has specified in this particular chapter is how both the governments have taken remarkable decisions in 2015. I think he has specified that particular span between 2015 and 2017. This span is very crucial in enhancing our bilateral ties, because several important decisions have been taken during this particular point of time. Say, for example, one is demarcation of maritime boundary and the land border agreement. I know, because I was in conversation with Pinagda for some of other point of my lectures. And he actually clearly stated how he played very important role to take several steps to make it final that the demarcation of maritime boundary, or the demarcation of maritime boundary and the land border agreement will take place. So these two are very crucial from both sides of the government in 2015. And then we know that both the governments were very keen to sign on coastal shipping agreements. So, which has also, I think, is also a very important and significant state so far as India-Bangladesh is ties are concerned. And since then, he has also specified that it's true that it is going on a very, very concrete way to strengthen the bilateral ties and all sorts of connectivity projects, starting from short sea shipping or the development of port of calls, and also the manifestation of India's active neighborhood first policy, engaging Bangladesh, enhancing connectivity points of northeastern India. All sorts of policies and implementation of policies in reality have taken place since then. And I think now we are in an age where we are looking forward to have this kind of transit enhancement facilities, and we know that it has created a kind of enthusiasm among the entrepreneurs, among the traders, business persons, that if it is possible to avoid congestion of Chittagong port, and we know that how Bangladesh has helped India to transship their own product from Kolkata port to Chittagong port through coastal shipping arrangement. And also we are now also planning to engage more functionally with the Mongla port through our protocol route, as we know that we have signed long time back in 1972 that India-Bangladesh protocol route. Now we are gaining momentum, though the pace is slightly sluggish. And the one important point is to understand here that specifically in terms of coastal shipping agreement and also in terms of the inland waterway protocol routes, we always intend to focus on the supply side. But it is also important to understand the demand side. What kind of cargoes, what kind of products we intend to get from other side of the border. It should be very clearly stated. Say, for example, I am looking at several paper clippings about, the anti-India feeling and also the India boycott, campaign. And all parallelly, I saw the initiative from the Indian government to send a banned cargo, that is onion, and which has been specified as onion diplomacy. So in this particular phase, I think Professor Hawke has also identified it is very, very important to understand each other's perception. What is the need of our from other side of the border? And we know that perception is multi-layered, and it can vary from one place to another. But it is very, very important in an age of social media to understand who are controlling the social media, and also how can we actually understand this kind of language of social media. And we are very happy to know that Honorable Prime Minister Hasina, she has also stated that it is basically that there is no base in it, so there is no need of worry. And also Pinagda has talked about the China factor, and he has also stated regarding the vulnerability of chicken neck corridor, which is located in Siliguri and 22 kilometers away from border. So this is a vulnerable factor, and we know that there is probability and possibility of engagement of China in the development of Tista, which has created a kind of I will not say tension, because again, Honorable Prime Minister has stated that there is no worry about it, and it should be treated, geopolitically, geostrategically. And I think this is a very interesting book, and I will request Pinagda to tell something if he faced any kind of anti-India, campaign or propaganda during his tenure in Bangladesh, because we know that these kind of, statement or these kind of campaigns, these are not really a new thing. So I will end here and will wait for Pinagda's statement. But I'm very happy, Pinagda, reading your book. And I haven't said anything on partition, though I know this is my niche area, but I will not touch because for today, I'm much more interested to talk about connectivity. Sushant?
Just one thing I think I should say out here. I am convinced that the only way of dealing with social media is by developing a thick skin. Because unless you have a thick skin, there is no way you can control it. There is no way you can. There are all kinds of crazies in this world, and social media has given them a megaphone. So learn to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And if everybody is going to start reacting to every post on social media, then you've had it.
Yes.
This world will end. So, Ambassador
Absolutely.
Sikri, the floor is yours. But just one question, something which Ambassador Shahidul Haq had spoken about, and if you can just touch upon that in your comments. How much of the relationship that we are now seeing with Bangladesh, how much of it is institutionalized and how much is driven by individuals? Because, there was this fear when the elections were taking place that is this relationship entirely based upon one person, Sheikh Hasina, or is there a certain depth to this relationship beyond that individual or the individual on both sides?
Thank you very much, Sushant. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. And of course, I must begin by congratulating Pinak on this wonderful book that he has written. And it's really a labor of love, and it's a lot of research that you have done in writing this book. So it's a lot of hard work also. Pinak succeeded me as High Commissioner in Bangladesh, and of course, he had already had one tenure there before that. So, of course, your knowledge and depth of knowledge is absolutely not in doubt. And your deep interest, your love for that area, because, as you said, your family origins in that area also come out through the book. So, we must congratulate you on putting it together in this a very readable way, very interesting. It's really, makes you want to finish it as soon as you start. You can't put it down. So congratulations on this excellent outcome. Let me focus. I will come to your question, Sushant, in a minute. I think 3 chapters in Pinak's book were of particular interest. And maybe if we look at those issues, then we can come to an answer also about what you've said about institutionalization versus individualization. The one chapter that was very interesting was on religion and politics. So that brought out a lot of very interesting issues. And maybe we can have a discussion afterwards. Ambassador Shahidul Haq is here. And it's amazing. The last time I was in this room, Ambassador Shahidul Haq, you were in Geneva. And this time you're in Belgrade. So, I mean, amazing. You travel so much. It's good to see you on your world travels. So, coming back to this chapter on religion and politics, I found it very fascinating because it brings out an issue which is sometimes seen as a very big issue, that it has to be because religion is there. So it's quite natural for the people of Bangladesh to have this kind of feeling and, you shouldn't question it. But Pinak has brought out a lot of the nuances in that issue, and that is interesting. But I would like to point out that when you talk about this issue of religion being a natural issue in Bangladesh and focus on religion, moving towards religion, I point to India's relationships with Saudi Arabia. I point to India's relationship with the UAE. I point to the foreign trade agreement that we have, the FTA that we have concluded with UAE, which has led to such an enormous exponential growth in trade. So obviously and this has all happened in the last 10 years. So obviously when we look at this, the way that relationship with the Gulf countries, the relationship with Saudi Arabia, the Qatar relationship, so many. And there's so many aspects in other relationships as well with Muslim majority countries that have developed and have come out. And Prime Minister Modi has received the highest civilian awards from many of these countries. So obviously, we have to look at something beyond just religion. Religion becomes a very easy way out. It becomes a very easy explanation that, oh, this is because of religion, and, just accept it, just don't say no. It cannot be. We have to look beyond that, and there has to be a lot of maturity on both sides to do that. And I think one example of it, which has also come out very well in Pinak's book, is, say, for example, the reaction on the CAA and the NRC. And we do know, and it was said repeatedly by our governments and explained at the highest levels, that this is not to do with the Muslim population of Bangladesh. It's not to do with the Muslim population of India. It's not to do with any citizen of India. It's only a very particular case, but still it created so much furor, and even Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said something, etc. So I think, again, this whole factor of religion has to be put in perspective. And I think it's very important to bring that perspective. I think this religion factor by itself does not play a role at the highest level. When there are talks between Prime Minister Modi and Sheikh Hasina, these factors don't come in at all. But I think it is at the other levels, corporate level, academic level, students level, young professionals level. This is where it has to be discussed and explained and understood. I think this is a very, very important aspect that we have to come into, because we have to look at it in terms of how India has developed its relations with all countries. Similarly, but it's this whole question when you look at Pakistan, because Pakistan plays it in that context, so that is why it's now. So that is another aspect that I want to bring in, that in recent years, you have seen in Bangladesh a kind of revival of the Pakistan relationship. I think I would say that a lot of this focus on religion may be coming from there. From decades in between, one could say quite clearly that the intelligence agencies, etc., the trade, there was really no relationship between Bangladesh and Pakistan, and there was a complete freeze in that sense. There has been a big thaw, and we've seen it in some of the meetings, in some of the messages. So maybe this is where the feeling is growing in Bangladesh about religion has to be there. But I think the Bangladesh of 1971, when you saw a complete balance between religion and your Bengali identity and your religious identity, and that is what drove the liberation, the fight for the liberation war. That's what drove each participant in that liberation war. That's what they were fighting for. Even if you see that the Muslim League was founded in Dhaka, but nonetheless, by the time of post-1947, what happened between 47 and the 70s, the results of the election in 1970, all that, it's very clear. So this debate about the balancing between the two aspects of identity were very important, and I think that should come into the debate at all times. The other chapter that I found very interesting, I'd like to mention, is about, I think we've called it vexed issues or something. Yes, vexed issues. That's right. That's the one. Where you have highlighted some of the challenges, the issues of difference between India and Bangladesh, traditionally considered as issues of difference between India and Bangladesh. And although your list at the beginning of the chapter has about 6 or 7, but at the end you've added some more. Like, for example, the China issue is added at the end of that chapter, but it's not there in the list at the beginning of the chapter. But it's very interesting that you have developed these issues and discussed them in great detail, because I think as you have brought out in handling these issues, that there is so much scope for dialogue, for understanding. And actually sometimes when we talk about these issues, there is so little dialogue between the two countries that we could be talking about different issues. Let me talk about the TISTA, for example. When we were talking about, of course, right now we've only negotiated percentages, but the key issue is percentage of what? I mean, you're talking of, okay, so-and-so will get 10 or 20 or 25 or so-and-so, but of what? So how much water is there in the Teesta? And when you look at both sides, I think, agreed at one point to give their own estimates of the water flow in the Teesta and the availability of water. And I think the answers were so diverse, were so different, that it looked like they were talking about two different rivers. With Bangladesh thinking there's an enormous amount of water, and India saying, look, there's just no water. The Teesta is one river where 90% of the water supply comes in the rainy season, and 10% is available in the dry season, where the dry season is 7 months. So, there's 10% spread out over 7 months. So it's an enormous example of an issue where if we talk to each other, and I've been saying for 20 years, let's do a joint hydrological survey where we walk down together from the glacier right to the sea and see how much water there is at different parts. And that's the only way of a joint hydrological assessment that accounts for the success of the Ganga Waters Treaty in its implementation. So that is the only way to do it. Because otherwise, you're always talking about apples and oranges. Somebody thinks it's an apple and somebody thinks it's an orange. So I think that this is a very important aspect. And the last part of that chapter you mentioned is about China. And here again, there's a very interesting aspect of this debate about China. And you see a lot of people writing about it in the media in Bangladesh, even today. It comes in the vernacular and in English. And, there's sort of a thing that, no, we have to have China, because we can't have only India. So it's kind of like a kind of a balancing factor and so on. But in all this discussion of China and the need to balance, and nobody talks about what have been the benefits of the Bangladesh-India relationship, and what are and what could be the benefits of the China-Bangladesh relationship. I mean, what has China given Bangladesh except debt? Okay, 80% of your military aid does come, military hardware does come from China, but at what prices? And, the indebtedness that it has caused. And very often, even if you get a plane at so-called friendship prices, the spares are so expensive that very often you're cannibalizing existing planes to meet the demand of spares for other planes. So it's a very difficult aspect. And it should be, again, discussed and examined at all levels so that we are able to understand each other better. And I think Bangladesh is fully free to have its relationship with any country of the world to any degree or extent that it feels is appropriate. There's absolutely no problem with that. But nonetheless, despite in the course of friendship, in the course of discussions, and that is where people-to-people relations are so important, because you can discuss these things openly and freely and based on figures as to what is the benefit or the advantage. But I must congratulate Pinar for bringing out all these issues that we have to that we've been able to do, and that's very important. And the final chapter that I liked very much was your conclusion, because there again, in the conclusion, you have sort of wrapped up so many issues issue-wise, and the final sentence about intertwining is very important. And the question I would like to raise to Ambassador Shahidul Haq, who talks about the intertwining between India and Bangladesh, which is absolutely correct and inescapable. Whether you want to or not, it's inescapable. So what do you think about the intertwining between China and Bangladesh? Isn't it a bit drawing it a bit over the Himalayas into Bangladesh? I mean, it's a question of, how important and how feasible that is. But anyway, that's one of the aspects, and I would like to congratulate Pinar on bringing this out very well. Let me look at this question that you raised, Sushant, about institutionalization versus individualization. I have always believed in institutionalization, and I think that is the only way to go, and that is the way in which you can hope to make things irreversible and hope to make things based on mutual benefit. So that is the way to go. And I think that is the way we have always worked on our individual relationships. And let me give you a very strong example right here and now, which should actually finish off this debate about individualization. And that is what comes out in Pinak's book in that chapter on Transformation 1, when he talks about the first transformation as happened under the caretaker government of 2007 and 8. That's not a Army League. So he is seeing the first transformation in the relationship as caretaker government. So obviously the army-backed caretaker government, which, the army-backed, that's important. The same army which during the Ziaur Rahman years and the Ershad years were at the pinnacle of anti-Indianism. The same army-backed caretaker government, and I explain it always by saying that once the Bangladesh army got its BMA-trained chief of army staff, which began during the time that I was there, that really brought about some important change in their outlook, and also brought about a different approach. So you saw this under the army-backed caretaker government, that they were very open to having a good relationship with India, working out things about trade and all the same issues. We were discussing them in a very friendly way, and as Pinak has pointed out in his book, he was able to overcome so many of the issues. So I think this whole issue that is often highlighted, that are you depending only on Sheikh Hasina? We are depending on those people who have good views towards India. Friendship with all, malice towards none. So if you can develop a relationship with a person who has a positive view, or a group of people, again, it's a whole party, it's a whole movement. The entire movement for the liberation war, for the liberation of Bangladesh, was focused on this. And as we have seen, I think particularly in the last 10 years, the way the transformation has built up, it's very much on mutual benefit. And it's not to anybody's detriment at all. There is not a single aspect of negativity in it which has caused a detriment to either Bangladesh or India. In fact, I think we must congratulate the leaders and also the tremendous, machinery of implementation that is there on both sides by the bureaucracies and the ministries, that they have, in the implementation, worked for this mutual benefit. And that is the strength of the relationship. So I think I agree, you can, if you want, you can ignore India out, but it is also interesting that some people are wanting to resort to India out. They're so desperate that they want to do it. And let me remind them, the same people in Bangladesh who are today trying to talk about India out and trying to whip up a feeling about India out, I want to remind them about the Maldives example, because they are trying to imitate Maldives and bring India out into Bangladesh in imitation of Maldives. But I'd like to tell them that in Maldives, it's the people themselves who have opposed the India out. I mean, the people have gone against it. And in fact, former President Soleh even told the President Muizu not to be stubborn about these and to develop a good relation. And all the trade associations, the Travel Trade Association of Maldives, and individuals, academics, corporate leaders. I know in my own group, the South Asia Women Network, some of our leaders from Maldives were there. I mean, they wrote messages to the whole group and said, we don't know quite what is happening in Maldives. So I think that this is the important part, that we have to have a relationship built on mutual interest and built on an issue where everybody is a part of it. They know what is happening and they feel a part of it. If it's the students, they know because they're coming here. If it's the people who come for medical treatment, they know what happens, the benefit they get when they come here. If it's the corporate leader, they know how exports to India have increased, even whether it's ready-made garments or other. The way when we were there, when I was there, we were struggling to get Bangladesh exports to go beyond $100 million. It had just crossed 50 million. I said, I'm going to make sure it crosses 100 million. Today, you're talking of billions of dollars. So it's an enormous increase. And also the imports, we will say very rightly that imports from India are very high, but many of these imports go into your exports, go into value added, which then leads you to have exports abroad. So I think that and this issue is very important. So I think I've focused on some of the aspects. We could certainly take up more when we come into the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sikri. Before I go into the Q&A, I'll use my privilege as the moderator to put the first question. I think it's very remarkable that you mention this fact about how the army, in a sense, became an agent of change as far as India is concerned. Now, on the west of India, we have an army which has had some chiefs who've tried to do something similar. But the moment the guy doffs his uniform, the next guy comes and wants to become an even bigger jihadist than anybody else. So So clearly on the Western side, there's a huge problem. But I think we've seen a lot of pragmatism on the Eastern side. But my question is more about, we keep talking about how uh, the fact that uh, Sheikh Hasina's government, when it came into power in 2009, it was very sensitive to India's security concerns. She wasn't as sensitive in her previous tenures. But when she came in 2009, she moved with a lot of alacrity. Is it simply because the penny had dropped? Or is it also because the very same forces which were inimical to India in Bangladesh were also a major threat to her own security and her own politics? And there was a convergence out there. Uh, or was it simply just that the penny dropped that she needed to address that? And after this, the floor is open, anybody is free to. And the ground rules are very simple. Please identify yourself and please identify who you are posing the question to. And after that, we'll go ahead. But, sir, you can answer mine before I go to everybody else.
That's a very, very interesting and searching question that you've asked. In fact, I had an occasion to very privately discuss with Sheikh Hasina ji when she told me that don't worry, that we will ensure that the IIGs and others, and she implemented all her promises. So I asked her that, I used to call her Appa. Appa is, elder sister. So I said, Appa, you could have done this when you were in power last time. So she smiled at me and says, yes, you're right in asking this question, but at that time the circumstances were not appropriate. Now, I would interpret that as saying what you have been saying, that the deep state had changed. So the deep state which was involved in all these things during those days had changed. Why? Because as General Moin, who was the who I think took over when you were there,
Yeah, that's right.
Once told me very, very pointedly that, High Commissioner, don't forget there are no more Pakistani trained officers in the Bangladesh Army anymore. I am the first Bangladesh Military Academy product, and hence rest assured that that kind of thinking and mindset is now history. Words to this effect, he said. So that is what changed a lot when Sheikh Hasina came back to power and with an overwhelming majority, of course, under the caretaker administration's, remit in doing the election. So I don't know whether that answers your question.
This question is basically addressed to Pinang, but Ambassador Sikri is here, and you raise the issue, and therefore please do intervene if you think, or if you will definitely add to it, I'm sure. Pinang, of course, you and Ambassador Sikri and your old Bangladesh hands, you have spent practically so many years in Bangladesh. Therefore, I have traveled there so very often, particularly when I was in ICCR and I traveled there 3 or 4 times. There is a lot of cultural space between India and Bangladesh, a lot of history. I kept on giving examples of Tagore, Nazrul Giti, Hilsa, etc. You name it. There is so little to really distinguish between the historical antecedents of the two people, Bangladesh and India. There was a partition at the same time. The partition affected 2 parts of India the most: the western, near Pakistan, West Pakistan, and then Bengal. Therefore, the partition is a matter of history. So are the cultural and the historical common antecedents. My sense is that Bangladesh now being another country, independent, etc., we have to look at our own strategic spaces and see how do we deal with that strategic space in Bangladesh to enhance our own security, not Bangladesh, whatever it is. We are intertwined, but our security also depends upon what happens in Bangladesh. Of late, I find, and I've been there so many times, therefore, I was there during Durga Puja. I could not really make out distinction between Kolkata and in Dhaka, the Durga Puja, the fervor that we had. My question really is that of late, I find lot of reporting, it's not just social media, about the violence against the Hindu community, damaging the Hindu property, etc., etc. Now, this kind of a Hindu polarization or the Hindu factor, I have not seen before, at least not in my knowledge. What could be the reason behind this, number one? Because if we know why it is happening, we can deal with it. And I think it is necessary for this to be dealt with or completely put on the side in the interest of our own relations. Or are we going to keep holding our relationship hostage to this factor?
Hello everyone, I'm Abhay Gandwara and I'm currently a student at SOAS University of London, and I'm here just, so my actually question would be to, again, Pinak sir, if he entertains another question. So it's basically between what I have read on a very current note that the former, just a sec. Yeah, so the Secretary General of the ruling Awami Party actually had made a statement that Sheikh Hasina's foreign policy is basically being successful based on her economic diplomacy. If you're talking about the economic diplomacy over here, then is it possible to say that it's particularly the leader or the leadership that has actually been defining the foreign policy Bangladesh would have with India, and the future prospects might continue the same?
Hi, my question is to Ambassador Sikri. My name is Rahul. I'm an independent consultant. I spent a chunk of years in Myanmar, so I've seen a lot of the neighborhood crises or even relations develop in a very interesting manner over the last decade. My simple question is, firstly, non-judgmental. With the rise of Hindu nationalism in India largely considered to be a positive force, and here I'm taking a nationalistic stance, let's say, even if it's not a personal stance, how do you think it impacts relationships with countries like, as you said, Maldives, where the people of Maldives have an issue, and of course, in this case, Bangladesh too? Is that having a not so acknowledged impact on our foreign relations? Or is it that, that we're just going to look beyond that and say there's trade, there's history, there's cultural exchange, and move past it? Thank you.
Ambassador Goel mentioned. I have dealt with it in my book, in the chapter on, I think, vexed issues, that the minority issue is a vexed one in the sense of migration, etc. And but let me add a caveat here, that let us not blow it out of proportion. I don't think Bangladesh has any state-sponsored, policy or attitude towards the minority and to persecute them, unlike in Pakistan. That is a major, major difference. And many of the cases that we keep hearing about, Durga Puja, something happened or something happened, are really stray cases. I think the bigger problem, of course, there has been migration, populations have come down, etc. But there have been studies which show that the absolute numbers of minority in terms of Hindus has actually grown in Bangladesh. Now, you may say percentage-wise it has gone down. One study has shown that it has gone down mainly for two reasons, and these studies are done by Bangladeshis, not us. One is the larger expansion of the Muslim population and the lesser number of children that the Hindu families tend to have. Whatever the reasons, you can go into it. Though, by the way, family planning is one of the most successful in Bangladesh if you take by any criteria. So that is one thing. That second is the disposition of land, because that creates an impulse to run away. Of course, there are threats from local, biggies and muscle men and who are politically well connected. And The sad part, of course, is that not much is done to punish these people. Although they are arrested and all that, but then somehow it disappears. What happened to them? Maybe they get a few years jail or something and go up. But the fact that it is repeated has its origin in the fact that it has a bit of political patronage, and the fact that you can get access to the Hindu land, which is a very precious thing in Bangladesh. That is a motivation for some of these things. But I won't say that it is pervasive. I would say these are stray incidents mostly, but it has happened and it continues to happen. In fact, Professor Abul Barakat has written in his Disposition of Land. He's a very famous economist in Bangladesh, Dhaka University. I mean, I don't know why he said it, but he did say that in 30 years, there'll be no Hindus left in Bangladesh, for which he was, of course, came under a lot of, criticism and things like that. I don't agree with that, that this will happen. But there is a trickle that happens, and he has calculated, given numbers also, that there is a daily trickle, etc. So that's a fact of life. We have to accept it, and we know the history of why it happened, etc. So I would say on the minority question, that part. And the second was on economic diplomacy and its impact. I have a chapter in the book on basically, I've felt in the preface, I've said that Bangladesh's economic success is a story that needs to be told and retold. Because you are absolutely right that the economic success of Bangladesh has added to their diplomatic, the tools that you have for diplomacy. Ultimately, a nation's foreign policy is built on domestic strength, not on anything else. So if you are economically powerful or you are better off, then naturally your policies will also have, it'll impact on your foreign policies. So make no mistake that the nation's economy is a crucial factor in determining its foreign policy. And it has happened so in Bangladesh, definitely. Although there are other factors, but the future, I think, Bangladesh will succeed economically, I have no doubt, because of its policies, etc. Today, one may say that there is a bit of a downturn because of the COVID and the Ukrainian war, energy and food prices going very high. There's a depletion of foreign reserves, etc. But I think this is a temporary phase. The institutional and the foundations of the Bangladeshi economy, I dare say that they are not very strong in the sense that it is, for example, the exports, 80% are just ready-made garments. So diversification is necessary. I think the regulatory regime is weak in terms of banking, etc., which is there in almost all the countries. And so the businessman, politician nexus is there, which leads to non-performing assets, etc. So that's a reality, and that they'll have to deal with.
I think that when you talk about the rise of Hindu nationalism, this is a phenomenon in all countries. Some political parties lose the elections, others win the election. They have their manifesto, they implement their manifesto. This is not any kind of an exclusive happening. And I think that the first thing to understand is that with the government, the BJP government for the last 10 years, see the way in which India's bilateral foreign relations have developed with countries across the world. It's not any one kind of country, not any, I just spoke even when I made my presentation about the way in which relations with the Gulf countries have developed, with Saudi Arabia has developed. It's the same government, the same people, the same interaction. So I think that this question of a kind of a focus on Hindu nationalism, I don't even know if the term is something appropriate, but anyway, the focus on a policy that is presented as something negative, as something that goes against India's interest or goes against the people of India, is not something that is accurate, because India is a completely open country. All governments make their own assessments. They know what is happening in India. You may have newspaper headlines. You may have, that so-and-so happened to this person from this community. Then you've had some beheadings by tailors. All kinds of incidents happen. When any fringe element at any time tries to take the law into their hand, there must be strong pushback from the law and order agencies. There must be strong action, strong decision, punishment, and that must be given regardless. And it is being done regardless. From the Supreme Court downwards, you've seen decisions that cover all kinds of issues and aspects and have been quite fair and absolutely unequivocal on what is right and what is wrong. So I don't think at all that this issue of the description that you've used, that this Hindu nationalism as though it's an exclusive nationalism. I mean, look at the Pran Pratishtha, the launch of the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. All people from all religions were there. They were invited to be there and they went there and they participated in it. And the prosperity that the large number of tourists, 6 million they say in the last 2 months, that's going to bring to all the people of Uttar Pradesh. All businesses, all enterprises, whether it is hotel development or eatery development, anything, infrastructure development is there for all people. And the benefit of all the schemes that the government has implemented is known to be across the board. There is not a single iota of complaint from any community anywhere as having been discriminated for social welfare benefits, for opening of bank accounts, for receiving of whatever the allowances are or whatever the schemes are that they have been promised, or for receiving homes, or for receiving. I remember myself seeing when Yogi Adityanath was going for the second term of election, and at that time NDTV was going into the small villages and interviewing people. They were interviewing a Muslim gentleman, and he said, "Well, I've received my home, I've received my toilet, I've received my ration. I'm not namak haram, so I'm going to give the vote where my advantage is." So it's, I think one has to look at it in a very broad way. And media is there, everything is there. You'll have all kinds of exaggerations. This is wrong, this is wrong. I'm not saying everything is right. Everything is never right. There are always things that go wrong at all times of the day. So I think that in Bangladesh too, this attempt to portray the government as a negative because of that, the opposition is trying to do that. And they're using the India Out campaign to develop that. And they're trying to say that this anti-Indianism is a natural thing because of that. Now, none of these things are correct. And that's why I feel that we have to continue our dialogue with the people at all levels. This is important. And I know that we are doing it. A lot of people are coming to India, visiting. But I think there needs to be there used to be the India-Bangladesh Fund, which was set up. And then now it's sort of lapsed. It's not happening for many years now. So I think we need to push for that kind of thing. And I think that the question that Suresh asked is very much linked to this. Same thing, that, this minority question in Bangladesh, because of this anti-Indianism, it develops an anti-minority mindset there also. It's feeding that anti-minority mindset. And I believe it's come into even the schools and so on. And, people from the minority community going to the same schools. It is very prevalent. So I think that the only answer to it is to have an acceptance, because this is in Bangladesh's constitution. Secularism is one of the pillars of the constitution of Bangladesh. And as it is for all of us. So we have to, talk together and understand each other together and not allow this kind of propaganda about, government policies to create the anti-Indianism. It's a very important effort that we have to do. And I think that economic diplomacy is the bread and butter diplomacy for everyone. But I think one has to have an open mind, because there are aspects. We saw that with Sri Lanka, what happened. Going full steam ahead, suddenly everything collapsed and they've had such a tough time trying to put it together. So the weaknesses in the Bangladesh economy need to be looked at a lot more carefully.
On this Hindutva thing and nationalism, etc., let's not blow it out of proportion. This has not hobbled our foreign policy one bit. I agree with Ambassador Sikri on that. It's an internal issue for us. And most countries treat it that way. Most countries. Otherwise, why do you think Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all the Muslim countries of the Gulf are reaching out to India for whatever? One, of course, as I said earlier, is the economic aspect. That is for there. They see India as what can they get from Pakistan, for example? Pakistan is a basket case today. So they know that the economic aspects of their foreign policy or their national interest is tied up with another economy which is thriving, which is bigger, in which they can invest because they have a lot of money, etc. I think that is generally accepted by all countries, that Hindutva is a kind of a phenomena, local phenomena, as a whether. But will it, for example, overcome our system or our way of life or social other? I doubt they believe that. But they also feel, for example, that, look, if I can, do my Islamic nationalism, then they can also do their nationalism. There are arguments like that also I have heard, that we tend to feel that we have a right to Islamic nationalism, but they don't have a right to Hindu nationalism. That kind of argument is prevalent also. So they also look at it in that way. And as far as I've not touched on Hindutva in my book at all because I didn't get into that. But in terms of religion and politics, I have mentioned how Islamization of society has happened. Greater, adherence to rituals and things like that. There are very interesting photographs in Dhaka University, for example, showing women in Dhaka University in the 50s. No burqa, no hijab, nothing. But the same university today, if you go, there are far more burqa-wearing women and hijab-wearing women. Why is that? What happened? Huh? Oh, well, it has happened everywhere. So, so there is a kind of going back to the roots kind of thing, or sticking more to the ritualistic aspect of religion. That has happened. That has happened in many countries, including Bangladesh.
Can something be done on two counts? One is investment. The more investment India makes, the more friends it could get. There was a time when Mr. Ratan Tata personally went, but and with $3 million worth of offer. It didn't work out. That would be one area where it would help closer relations. The other is culture, and there is so much of commonality between the two Bengals. When I was there, Ritik Ghatak made his famous film, Tita Sekti Nodir Naam. Rajan Taraftar made. A lot of cooperation was there between the two cinemas. That, I think, has come down, over the years. Although recently I saw a Bangladeshi film with the late Irfan playing the lead role. But that, I think, is a very rare thing. Not much has happened on this particular front. If that can help, relations can be improved. Thank you.
Pinak, the last two elections that have taken place in Bangladesh, there have been a lot of questions about its fairness and legitimacy. Given the almost complete centralization, and if I may say personalization of power in Netri, how do you see political stability in the future? And how will that affect things? Because regardless of what has been said, everybody who's visiting from Dhaka talks of unprecedented level of anti-India sentiment today. So any comments on that?
I'm Rajiv Sinha, and a distinguished fellow of the ORF here. I had a question where, in the run of the last elections, the US had shown a keen interest in the way things were happening, and there were comments coming out of Washington, which kind of hurt Dhaka in a very big way. Now, how do you see that relationship working out? Is it just an American effort to check China again and Bangladesh as well? And could this newfound US interest in Bangladesh, could it be an irritant in the relation between India and Bangladesh too?
Mahenderji is very important, and you are right that that kind of cooperation between the film industry, for example, has not happened, except that Shyam Benegal has made a movie on Bangabandhu, which is doing very well, and it's quite a hit actually. But yes, you're right. But that doesn't mean that cultural interactions have reduced or have gone down. I don't think so. I think look at the number of Bangladeshi cultural personalities visiting India. We don't hear of them much here. But in Kolkata, definitely they come, because that is where they can perform. I mean, the songs, the plays, etc., and all that. There is there. But We can always do better and more. I mean, I have no doubt about that. I think, Tony, your thing about the election, yes, there have been questions raised about the election, etc., and whether it was fair and free, what happened, etc. But I think those questions, my own view is that those questions will remain always. In my view, the 2008 elections were the most free and fair, because I was there and I saw it. It took place under the caretaker government, and I know how meticulously they made the voters list. And they had to remove more than 2 crores of false voters from that list. So I don't know what is. I think that voters list was good, and if they have built upon it, that would have been fine. And but then, allegations will always come. Now, don't forget, parties that cannot win an election, even in India, they say the EVM is rigged. So this is part of politics, I think. The anti-India feeling comes basically from the fact that the BNP as a party was based on the fact that, and I say this with some trepidation, that even in 1971, that 30% of the population did not want liberation and independence. They somehow had the feeling and the mindset that, we are breaking up an Islamic country, and that is bad for the Ummah. And that kind of feeling which comes out of certain, mindsets, which I can trace back to the Partition, to the Muslim League, or whatever you want. And the BNP still relies on that vote bank, which is either, you can call them either anti-Awami League or, a mindset of the Muslim League, a bit of anti-Indianism, throw in all these things, and that's where the BNP comes from. And Jamaat-e-Islami, we know, is a pro-Pakistani outfit, has been a pro-Pakistan outfit for a very long time. They, in fact, tried their best to prevent the emergence of Bangladesh in 1971, but were rehabilitated by the military dictators later on. Now, so that is how I see, but anti-Indian feeling has been there, it will be there, and it will be exploited by some people all the time. Will it be overwhelmingly, will it create such an upsurge that, I doubt it very much. It will remain at some level. Politicians, the BNP particularly, will exploit it, which they are trying to do now. But let me say, social media has added a new factor, because a lot of these expatriate Bangladeshis are the real movers in the social media. And they are linked to the BNP and the Jamaat and the people who are abroad. They have been, they started this anti-India, India out campaign, which the BNP thought, look, okay, let's. Now, why BNP has taken it over? I think the orders have come from London, that this might be a good peg to hang on to. The vice chairman, Tariq Rahman, who sits there and basically controls and who sends instructions. So I have a feeling that that is a factor. Will it work? Huh?
All these problems normally come from London.
Yes, why not? I think so, you're right. So I think it won't last. It won't have traction in the sense that, and I think Sheikh Hasina has come out with a quip and comment on this recently, because the BNP opposition leader made a public show of taking off his shawl and throwing it in front on the pavement, and people were lighting a fire. It was obviously an Indian shawl. My question is, why the hell did he buy an Indian shawl? He didn't have to. Nobody forced him to do that. Now they are putting out stories that grocers are complaining that Indian items are not moving, etc. So they're not pleased. So this is happening as a political kind of thing. So sorry.
Before you come to Rajiv's question, I just wanted to add to something to that, because we had a scholar who had come out here who was talking about the kind of lobbying which is going on in the United States. I don't know if you were there that day, and it was very clear that American political establishment is pretty clueless. So depending on who's paying how much money, you can buy support even on the Hill. And that is why pressure was being built to start raising this issue about elections and stuff like that. And that started feeding into the administration as well. So that has been happening, and it was being traced out to BNP and Jamaat-e-Islami people, which was kind of strange because at one level, the United States wants to fight terrorism. I don't know if they actually call it terrorism also anymore, because they think that it's not politically correct to call it terrorism. It's not woke enough, apparently. No, I'm serious. So that's how the Americans are looking at it. But at one level, they say they want to fight terrorism. At another level, they actually are lobbying on behalf of an organization which is in many ways the ideological font of terrorism.
This is very interesting.
I just wanted to add one point here, but this is a problem that has been there with America right from the beginning. They have always thought that Jamaat-e-Islami is a moderate Islamic party. They've always said that. That has sort of been at the State Department or the deep state within the State Department.
Just also telling us the Taliban 2.0 have changed.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the point. So it is again up to, we have to bring the facts out and tell them. I mean, like the same American government that was criticizing the Sheikh Hasina government before the elections is now promising to work with them. So, real politics does take over everything. And I think I agree that the social media has actually caused riots. Buddhist temples, 400-year-old Buddhist temples have been destroyed just by one social media post, and this is against, So I think this whole issue of blasphemy and accusation of blasphemy really does create a terrible problem. Yeah.
Well, I think right that there is a huge amount of lobbying going on by the Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP in different countries, and that did have an impact by the US suddenly decided that they had to put sanctions on the anti-terrorist activities. I'm not saying that they may have done some, what we in India call encounters and things like that, or what the Americans called extrajudicial killings. And they did crack down on all this. You remember the holy artisan, that very bad thing that happened. So sanctions were used as a tool to put pressure on Bangladesh. But the impetus was coming from abroad, BNP, Jamaat, lobbying, as he said, in different countries, particularly the USA. Now, that didn't work, obviously, and it did create a little bit of a kerfuffle, as we say, between India and the US. And when the last 2+2, I think, conference took place in India, I think the Americans were told very clearly by us that, don't interfere in Bangladesh like this. And it's not something that we can appreciate, and it will have an impact on our bilateral relationship. That message was given, I think. I know it for a fact that it was given, because it immediately led to the American ambassador being asked to come to Washington. And there, I don't know what happened, he was told, but he went back and just hid himself. He didn't appear after that in public. Whereas before that, he was going around trying to organize things, support for the BNP and the Jamaat and things like that. What I have always found very strange is this American inclination to support the Jamaat. I don't think they consider it moderate or anything, but they say that. Of course, they said it to you, to me, everybody. But I think it is an old animosity that they have with the Awami League. And Awami League reciprocates that to some extent. Because in 1971, what happened has not been forgotten. And what the Jamaat-e-Islami did has not been forgotten. You can rehabilitate them, reinstate them in the mainstream of politics. But people have not forgotten what they did. And that remains a point. And BNP, by the way, is a handmaiden of also the Americans. When Zia came to power and wanted to have a political party, it was Americans who were helping him to do that. So there has been this traditional coolness between the Awami League. Not that they have not done business. I mean, that goes on. But there is that historical memory that does create a little bit of a problem for us.
Chakravarti. Thank you everyone who's come out here. Ambassador Sikri, Anasuya and Ambassador Shahidullah are no longer with us. But thanks everybody for attending this discussion, and hope your book does really well. Maybe it should become a little cheaper. Might do much better. But thanks a lot, sir.